talk about this. And one thing I want to mention before a piece of news, because like sometimes we talk about like recent developments in news. Interestingly, John Carmack, the chief technology officer of Oculus, has stepped down, which is basically, I think now all of the founders of Oculus have left the company. So I'm just throwing that out there as a pretty big piece of news, I think, in terms of technology and stuff. It's pretty I was pretty surprised. So that's an interesting state of things.
Yeah.
Right before also Horizons comes out, which we'll get to in a little bit to talk about, because that's also kind of related to Facebook's MMO. So I'll be curious to see what people think about that. But yeah, so you are interested in MMOs and everything, and what led you to want to talk about it tonight?
Oh well, just so I was actually mentioning it to someone is that I'm not really an expert at much. Pretty laid back, normal guy. But because VR MMOs are so new and there's really only one, I'm one of a handful full of people in the world that actually has a lot of experience putting a lot of hours and time into VR MMO community. So I feel like I'm a good person to talk about it.
Cool. Yeah, especially in VR, which how many people here have played a VR MMO like Orbis, or I don't even know what other ones
Really,
exist, but
Orbis is really the only one. Township Tales like it ish,
okay.
but Township Tale, the servers are all around 15 people is about max, and I mean it depends on your definition of of massively multiplayer, but we'll get into that. So I actually made like a little slideshow, I guess, to kind
Yeah,
of
go ahead.
guide us through thoughts. So let me see if I can get this thing. There we go. Okay, so this I just threw a name up there. Ironcrad back again. So VR MMOs have been thought about for a while now. Really in the last decade, they've become super like in the pop culture. A lot of animes about people getting trapped in VR MMOs. It's all going back to Sword Art Online. It's really the first one that became super popular.
Matrix.
Um, yeah, but the Matrix is kind of a VR MMO. It's more of a prison in a digital form, but
Hmm.
yeah. Okay, so who the hell am I? I'm a lifetime gamer. I've been playing all the way back to the regular Nintendo back in the '80s, uh, and I got VR in 2016, around the time a lot of people did. And when Orbis came out in 2017, I really latched onto it. Started playing it from the beta. I started two different guilds that we were able to get into the kind of the top PVE guilds, where we were able to get a couple of world firsts. Nothing major. There was a couple guilds. So I have kids and a job and a life. So I'm only on 4 or 5 nights a week where if anybody's played MMOs, and especially large scale MMOs, that ain't gonna get you to any world first. They have people that live and breathe these games, and there was a couple of guilds, even in Orbis, as small as it was, that lived and breathed the game, and they would, when content would come out, they would just play 24/7 till they beat it. But usually we were in the top three. Um, I'm not a game designer. I'm not a dev. I'm not a coder. I don't understand all the technical hurdles of making a great MMO. I'm a terrible public speaker. I'm sweating in my headset right now. So just letting you know, I'm going to stumble a little bit. But
That's
I'm
okay.
I promise not to apologize after this, though. I wanted to just get it out there first so I don't apologize.
You're doing great.
After.
You're doing
Yeah.
great.
And so in that, this is actually taken from my Steam account. I got 1,667 hours. Now, probably my preface is my wife paid about 500 hours of that before I had to buy.
Oh, the typical my wife played these hours
So
excuse.
I
Yes.
actually, so I played first, and my guild was so close, and I talk about them so often that she started getting on our voice comms because she wanted to learn about these people that I talk about so much. And eventually she started playing with them when I was at work, and I had to buy her a headset and her own account. And yeah, she actually, the guild I'm currently in, she's actually the quote unquote leader of it. We're not a guild with leaders. We're more like a family, but
And
she's the person holding it.
and I guess how many people here have been in a guild in an MMO? I'm just curious, or a clan. And thumbs up, emoji thumbs up if you have, and
Oh,
emoji
thumbs up.
thumbs down.
Pretty much know like how many guilds.
Oh
Some
wow, a
people
lot
were
of
like
guilds.
10 plus or something.
Well, and I
Wow.
think that's part of what VR MMOs. I think that's so enticing about it is that I've played other RPGs, other MMOs, and in other games, where your guild is more of a group of players that you can depend on to run stuff with.
Mhm.
But in a game that's so personal that they they really become your friends and like family. Like I mean, I know so much about the guys I've been running with, and I think it's because your speech and interaction is so natural compared
It's
to
and it's also it's immersive.
exactly.
Interesting.
So
That's
so yeah, and
also.
that's oh,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
no. I was just going on to say, oh, I'm gonna figure this thing out. Okay, just what makes a VR MMORPG exactly like terminology, so we're all talking about the same thing. Because some people, I've heard people say, well, that's an MMO, but it's not a VR MMORPG and all that. It's three different abbreviations smashed together. VR, we all know because we're in. MMO is massively multiplayer online, and RPG is role playing game. So a lot of games could fit this loosely. VRChat
Yeah.
is definitely fits this because we're all playing a role. Even if you're playing yourself, I mean, you're playing a role. I mean, you could say a massively multiplayer RPG is going to work every day because everybody is acting in a certain way that they want others to see them in. But I'm more talking about specifically the game type of MMORPG with leveling in different classes.
And how do you define role playing?
So exactly. I mean, because role playing games go back to D&D, and I'm sure there was some before. I mean, in psychology, I'm sure they were doing role playing games all the way back to the beginning of psychology
Monopoly.
to test. Yeah, exactly.
Hmm.
But I think I'm talking more specifically about what we think about VR MMOs going back to RuneScape, EverQuest, World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy 14, those types of games, but in a VR format instead of flat screen or pancake as we call it, pancake games. So I made a little timeline of kind of VR MMOs in pop culture. The first time I really started thinking about it, like you said, The Matrix, I didn't even think about The Matrix because I was a huge Matrix fan. And I remember they actually came out with a Matrix MMO that did terrible. I never played it, but it was absolutely terrible from what I understand. But I never thought of it as a VR MMO though. But when I read Ready Player One, that's when I was like, oh my God, I'd love to have a virtual world I could live in and then take it off and just go home, go to bed. You know what I mean? Which is like VRChat. And to me, VRChat is actually the closest thing to Ready Player One we have. And that came out in 2011. And then in 2012, that's when Sword Art Online's anime came out. And a month later, Oculus's Kickstarter came out, which is actually really good timing together because a lot of people watch Sword Art and they were like, yeah, it would suck to die in an MMO. But to live in that world would be, it was a poorly written MMO, but it was beautiful. And I mean, to want to be in that world is an obvious thing.
Phil, did you have a quick comment? I saw the exclamation point.
Note that SAO had its books written in the early 2000s, preceding World of Warcraft. So yeah,
Really?
the mechanics are not clicky.
And that's I know SAO was out in the mangas before, but so that I think it really became big in popular culture when it came out in the anime.
So that's interesting. So Phil, when you were saying that, so it has an anime, and then Phil, you were saying that the mechanics did World of Warcraft mirror some of the mechanics of SAO, or people think that's like an inspiration, or?
Oh, World of Warcraft has released after the books were written, at least the original web novel, and that's why the mechanics inside of SAO are so weird, because no one actually knew what they would be like back then.
Ah, so they kind of like.
What was going to happen before, like, yeah.
Do you have an example? I'm just curious. Do you have an example of the mechanics that were different in that, like, were disparate from what, like World of Warcraft or anything had?
No,
It's
he was
seen
just saying
from
the
the big
mechanics in
ones.
SAO are seen as bad because nobody knew what the mechanics in a MMO would even
Yeah,
look like. And then when World
yeah.
of Warcraft came out, that kind of cemented what
Solidified,
mechanics
yeah.
look like in those type of games.
So like, what mechanics are you talking about exactly?
I guess maybe the sequential world bosses. I'm pretty sure like if that was a real game, it would be cleared out within like 30 hours
It's
by
not
people playing
replayable.
24/7.
Yeah,
Also,
interesting.
the expectation that you would beat a boss without dying the first time, when almost every boss in an MMO is made to slam your head against a few times before you actually clear it. In fact, if you beat it the first time through, everybody's like, "Man, this was way too easy." And then so, which would mean in SAO they would have all been stuck on floor 1 or dead, you know,
Hmm.
within
Yeah,
the
yeah,
first
yeah.
few floors.
Interesting, interesting.
Well, and then, like I said, a month later, after the anime came out, the Oculus Rift Kickstarter came out, and I'm sure that was huge news with when that came out. And then it was a few years before, and in this time, anime just riffed on the whole trapped in a MMORPG for like until today. And then we have but really in 2016 when the commercial commercial Oculus and the Vive came out. That's when I think VR became. It's still niche, but it was more mainstream. It became where lots of people had it.
It became possible.
And yeah, exactly. Because a
Yeah.
lot. Well, so sometime in here, I didn't have a good date. VRChat came out. They started working on VRChat and released it sometime in like 2014.
Yep,
Yeah,
beginning of
What game, actually?
2014, end of 2013. Yeah.
yeah. There just wasn't. There was like 2 or 3 people on at a time,
I was there.
and you were okay.
Yeah, yeah. Really, maybe like 4 months after they started, but like I got in right after they had all T-pose. Yeah, and then when I started using it on the DK2, it was like right after they had just like gotten some of the IK working, but like, man, they had, that was the beginning, and that's what's so cool too, to see like, with how do you actually start a community is a whole other thing that we can talk about. But like, VRChat started, and we would talk about like in the early days, we'd be like, oh, like, can you imagine if like people are on 24/7? The 24/7 active user base mark was like a really big, like, wow, it'd be so cool if we could make it to that day. But the DK2 days, it was so far away. But yeah, so exactly, like the proliferation of headsets seems very important in that.
I think
Yeah.
Shining Hero has it coming.
Yeah.
Not only how do you build the community, but how do you build the game? As you said
Yeah.
something earlier, you were just stuck like T-posing and everything. Building the game so they have motion, hand tracking, and everything.
Yeah.
Eye tracking.
You need
Yeah, they put a lot of work
eye
in.
tracking as well.
Well, and also another cool thing is that that's a really good question, and I think it's interesting because when a technology is new, merely having social presence in it, like with the DK2, you didn't have hands, you didn't have hand controllers, you just had to put on the headset, and you're able to actually be with other people. That was enough. There was no game. It was user generated content. It was exploring. Really, exploration was the game. But now, as we've progressed, VRChat's getting more and more intense. They're eventually going to have gaming. So it's almost as like the technology is progressing, and so now the level, and that's kind of like when SAO came out or was written about versus when WoW came out. It's like the bar keeps moving up and up and up. Just like when you said Orbis doesn't have necessarily as good graphics and stuff. It's like it seems like the bar just keeps raising and raising as we acclimate to the technology, which is interesting.
Definitely true. And so that gives us Orbis went into Kickstarter in March of 2017, and then it released in early access in December 2017. That's really that last month. I started playing in November of 2017 during the beta.
Did you
And
kickstart?
No. Actually, I actually heard about the game from Zarny Whoop. I was because I was at the time I was a big VRChat player, and I started playing VRChat in February of that year. Because that's when it came out on Steam.
Yeah.
And so Zarny Whoop told me about it, but when you bought into after the Kickstarter, you couldn't play the alpha. You could only buy into the beta, which I think I paid $50 for. And the beta started in November, so that's when I started playing. And I'm gonna get into that. Like when I started playing Orbis, I was highly disappointed. Like, and most people were.
Yeah.
The game like is barely playable. But we'll get to that. And
Hey,
then
why don't you mark
and
when
then
you
this.
got
I'm
first got
sorry.
your VR, when you played VRChat, and then when you played Orbis.
There you go.
Depends.
And
Just put it on the timeline. Come on.
no,
It's okay because we'll have to erase it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I'll be going to the next slide in no time. The last thing is this year, 4 different so using the term loosely, 4 different VR MMOs RPGs were announced. Zenith was one that most people know about. It's an anime style, both flat screen and VR MMO. They already did their Kickstarter. They're constantly trying to bring money in. They're always I'm on their Discord. They're doing all kind of referral programs and all kind of stuff.
Mm.
And then there's another game that's not up here. It's in super early phase. That's actually being made by all people who played Orbis. It's people from the Orbis community that actually they just kind of got fed up with Orbis. And they and they all had skills in game development, and they're like, we could do better than this. And they started development about 4 months ago. It's called Banners of Altruis. Yeah, they plan on doing their Kickstarter sometime early next year. I'm good friends with a lot of the team. It's so with any indie game, I'm a very realistic person. I say there's a 50-50 chance that it actually comes to fruition as a full game, but their ideas are good. So
okay, so I'm interested in this because like I'm kind of working on a VR mental health MMO or whatever, and I'm very curious that like they all have started on Kickstarter. Like it seems like why is Kickstarter such an important component to VR MMOs specifically?
Because specifically, there's no funding behind it whatsoever, and there's no investment. So
the user base is so small.
It's all people who are deciding to go at it for themselves. And because I know the people in Orbis, it's all about money. But I know the people in Orbis, like including myself, like we say, like as soon as another VR MMOs comes out, we're buying into it immediately, even if it's not perfect. Like we're obsessed with
to support it.
We're bought in 100%. But the software is just not there. I mean, so in this one right here was announced. They actually have a page on Steam. I don't even know how you pronounce that. Illissa? I don't know. But they haven't done their Kickstarter yet. And the weird thing, I'm kind of iffy about them because they actually said that they're coming out with they came out with a patron, but they don't have a Kickstarter yet. I'm like, how people are going to pay when you don't even have anything? But so that's another team that's putting together. And another game that's closer to coming out though is Nostos, which Nostos isn't really. It's more of a survival game. I'm sure. Have y'all seen Nostos around? Anyone?
Yeah,
actually, if you VR Pill has a playthrough, he was in the alpha on YouTube. It's more of a survival game, similar to like Ark. Survival.
Yeah, those are popular.
Yeah, and but it looks like it's gonna have server sizes in the 20 to 30 player range. It's not gonna be full MMO. So we'll have to see. It's being made by a much larger developer. It's a Chinese developer. They make mobile games mostly.
Oh, I think I've seen a preview for this. Yeah.
It's really pretty. It looks really good. I don't know like gameplay wise if it's gonna be good, but the graphics look really good.
It's also interesting because Orbis is a one-time payment system, which is unlike MMOs as well, like where you normally have a subscription model.
Yeah, I gotta say, like the creator of Orbis is very earnest, and I have to commend him because it's a passion project. He's not making tons of money off of it. He wanted it to be old school. He wanted it to be hard. He was making a game that he would play, and it's old school and hard. It's
interesting.
So now we get to Orbis. Okay, so I wanted to preface Orbis is different. So not only is it a VR MMO RPG, but it's also different than most MMO RPGs you played in a few different ways that affect the way I look at it. So almost every picture up here has some explanation. So for example, when the game came out, it's very simple. This right here is the closest thing we had to a map for the first 6 months. And all this is somebody took their camera, hacked it where they could get way up in the air and took a picture, because they never released a map of the game.
Oh my God.
We would go on Discord and just look at his pictures that he put to try to figure out where things are. And sometimes we're like, hey, wait a minute, you could clip through and see this. And we didn't see that and stuff like that. But the game didn't even have a map. Another thing is that it's super buggy. So I wanted to go through my experience the first time I played Orbis in the beta. Super excited to play this game. I load in. The sword doesn't work like a sword. The bow doesn't work like a bow. The gun does no damage, basically. In fact, so when you press the trigger on the gun, it doesn't shoot. When you release the trigger, it shoots. And there's like a 2-second just wait before you can shoot again. And the one class that's in all of the videos where you have a wand and you can cast spells, it's like supposed to be like the go-to class. Yeah, you don't even have that weapon. I have no idea how you get it. It's nowhere to be found in the beginning of the game. And I played about 45 minutes, crashed. Not even 40, probably 15 minutes. When I was getting out of the tutorial, I crashed. I had to do the tutorial again. Went downstairs, tried to fight a rabbit, died immediately, and quit playing for like a week. And I was like, this game is just trash. But after about a week, I had some more free time. Somebody else was telling me how much fun they were, and I decided I was going to try it again. The one thing I'd say is in a VR MMO, it's really hard to... So if you're playing a regular MMO, it's automatically you assume that you're not actually going to be emulating something from real life. So in a regular MMO, you know you're going to be pressing buttons to make actions happen. So you're not worried about things feeling like real life. Well, whenever you do something in VR, you kind of assume it's going to feel like real life.
Yeah.
Like using a bow, using a sword, things like this. But because we don't have any tactile feedback, the one thing I tell everybody who's new to Orbis is just accept that this is a class that's based around a mechanic, not based around real life. So you learn the mechanic independent of anything you can think about swords. Like if you're a good sword person, that doesn't mean anything in Orbis. In Orbis, you're actually going to swing your sword in weird combinations to do these combos. So it's more about just making sure you can make these combinations as fast as you can and dodging things. Yes.
I have a question just about the beginning experience, and I don't know how many people here had a similar experience, so I'm curious. But like when I first started RuneScape, which eventually I put 8,000 hours into, I was like, what the hell is this? Like, why am I catching lobsters? Like, I was in the tutorial island and I was like, what is this? And I was very skeptical and I kind of went away from it. And I had to come back to it a couple times after a friend showed it to me. Exactly kind of like similar to your situation. So I'm curious, did anyone else who got into an MMO, their first time playing it, were they kind of skeptical and then like came back to it again because of a friend, or did you guys have like your first experience was like, oh my god, this is amazing, and just stayed in it? I'm just curious, like if anyone has a experience about that. Yeah.
It wasn't so much skeptical so much as I wanted to try and see everything. Then I kept going through and realized, oh my god, there's a lot of grinding just to get to the point that I wanted to see.
And then that deterred you, or did you get hooked?
Not really deterred so much as basically just had me going, I want to see this. I'm going through with it.
Interesting. And Fail,
I mean,
I see you. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
And that puts me through a lot of games as well. I look to content. I want to see stuff. I want to see interesting things like this avatar too. It's blind. That's new and interesting.
Yeah.
Literally blind.
Interesting.
Oh wait, I can't see his avatar.
Interesting. Fail, did you have a
Show your
comment?
shaders.
Oh, I was yawning.
Oh my god! Sassy emo
grinding
over here.
Yeah. I will say
Black
that.
Desert Online. Desert Online.
What is Black Desert Online, or what about it did you like?
I just started playing it like a month ago or so. It's an MMO.
And what about it got you like into it or whatever?
What?
Cancel PvP.
um, it's really beautiful. It's actually super pretty. Like, just
Hmm.
you can take really nice pictures. It has like a special camera in there, and they come out really nice. You can make screensaver out of your picture of your avatar that you customize in the game. It's really aesthetic.
Interesting. So that's like the design. So that's kind of similar to what Chani was saying about exploring and kind of like it's the visuals that kind of
Mhm.
draw people in. And I feel like for
Yeah.
Orbis, I mean, my own commentary on this, and you were just about, I think you're getting to this, is like it's so insane to be when you said making the sword shapes. Like when I was in Orbis, actually going like this to pull the bow and arrow, my arm got it was like painful, and I was like, holy shit, this is a workout. I would be sweating. I was like, this is amazing. I'm burning calories and playing an MMO. And it was like, what the hell? So yeah, it's a very, very
Yeah,
different
and
experience.
that's the class I play. I play Ranger, which is not like being a real archer. In fact, in the original Orbis, and that's another. Orbis has been reborn. Oh, they did a complete redo of the game in April and started the game basically from scratch. A lot of the older players think they made pretty big mistakes. It's a lot more stable of a game, but they took out. In fact, I'm about to explain some things that makes Orbis different. That's not
Yeah.
in the current game. But so one thing that was really neat about Orbis, and I guess this could be done on a flat screen game. I don't know if it'd be as compelling. But
Yeah.
in Orbis, there's basically no potions other than I think there's a potion to make that you can get a recipe for by just doing quests that helps you catch fish better, and then your basic healing potion. But every other potion in the game, the only way you can get it is by finding it somewhere in the world. In fact, late in the quest lines, there is a potion you get called Ithacac that when you drink it, it makes the whole world look crazy, kind of like you're drunk. But you can find hidden things around the world. And
Wow.
whenever you drink that and
Very
walk
cool.
around the world, there's these hidden scrolls all over the world. And that's the actual potions for boosting your strength, boosting your magic power, boosting your vitality. And the only way, and the thing is, because it's such a small scale game, in fact, at the height, in January, February of 2018, was probably the height of the community. We were averaging 350 people a night. On average,
Wow.
it was about 150 people on at a time. So with a community that small, resources don't come up real fast. Like it's not like World of Warcraft. After a day or two, somebody's already made a video explaining how to do everything. You basically never get the feeling that you're learning anything that no one else ever has. Everything you've done has been done a million times before. It's just new to you.
Yeah.
Where in Orbis, there was legitimately 6 months after the game came out, somebody found something you could do with a potion that no one knew before. So if you take a regular healing potion, there's an aging desk. You can put it in, and you age it for 24 hours, and it would become finely aged. Well, if you put it back, you could age it for another week, and it would become something different. And usually, if you put something back after it's been aged, it'll overage and it'll become an overaged potion, which is just junk. It'll actually kill you if you drink it. But if you take that potion that you already aged twice and put it back again and age it for 26 days, and you only had a 12-hour window to pull it out, it would become this really uber potion. And it took 6 months before somebody found it, and they actually found it by doing going through the files and finding it, data mining it. They didn't actually find it in game, which made the developer disappointed.
Oh my god.
But yeah, there's a lot of stuff in the game that it was all hearsay. Like you would learn just by talking to other people. There was no website to explain how to get things. You would ask somebody, "Hey, how do you make this kind of potion?" And they're like, "Hey man, I'll get you an Ithacac and we'll go find it." And because they've already found it instead
I
of
experienced
somebody
that too.
writing it down.
Yeah,
And
it was
that's-
community. Yeah.
And that's something that I think is special about VR. Because a lot of people say, I don't like MMOs, I get bored. I do too. I actually have never went to Endgame. I played a lot of MMOs, but I never get to Endgame because I just get bored with them. But in the VR MMO, the community is so close and people are generally nice to each other because it's same as VRChat. When you're talking face to face with someone, it's hard to
Yeah.
be a big jerk.
And
you know
there's
what I
no
mean?
desktop mode. But
yeah,
yeah,
there is no
Screaming.
desktop mode. Yeah.
Screaming. Did you have a comment?
Yeah, I just had a quick comment about you mentioning how everything was hearsay, and when you say that, it makes me think it sort of brings me back to a time in gaming where, like you said, there was no YouTube for you to look something up. You know, when I was growing up, the internet wasn't as I guess flushed out as it is now.
Yeah,
So if I were playing a game,
the original
there
Nintendo had
would
all these
be
crazy things.
right, and there were all these like rumors about like, oh, you could do this in this specific game, or you can, if you go and do this specific thing, you'll find this, secret room or something. There were all these like Easter eggs that, people would tell you about, but you never really knew if they were true or if it was just something that was made up. So there's like this sense of mystery to the world. And I think that that's something that we'll see, uh, especially more in VR, because I think that you can only commit a certain amount of time to a VR MMO before, oh, well, I'm a little more, I'm a little tired from, moving around physically, or you feel like you've been in the VR headset too long and you need to take a break. So,
and not to mention, in a VR MMO, unlike a flat screen MMO where people download tons of mods and they have their screen just plastered with all this information, it's really hard to do that in VR. It's because you have to be able to actually see. And it's hard to write things down. It's a lot harder to communicate and just like tab over to something else.
I use Oculus Window, or if you have an Oculus, the desktop comes in handy a lot. Yeah, I used to do that with
it's still tough to type.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
That brings it to like this system in Orbis right here. This is actually a picture of a piece of paper my wife wrote that I just put the picture of. So this system is called artificing. It's the craziest system. So he never told us anything about it. He just said there's a system called artificing in the game that can give you a boost in power. That's all I'm saying. No tutorials, nothing. Well, we found a recipe for something called a rune sight potion. Well, when you drink it, every action you would make, these little runes that look like this would appear above your head. But you can't see them. Only other players can see them. So we were like, okay, that's weird. So we started writing them down. Well, then they found out that if you take, we found another recipe for, it was recipe pages that just had a list of symbols and then recipes underneath them. We didn't know what they were for. Well, those symbols were these symbols, and then there was a recipe that you had to use these rocks. Have you done artificing in the game? Okay, so there's these rocks. You picked up rocks in the game, linstanium, obsidian, all those rocks that you could find on the ground.
Probably. I don't remember.
You might not have got to Endgame, but whenever you pick up these rocks,
I only have one Endgame. Yeah.
But they would correlate to the recipes on these symbols. So we just had to try it. So I had somebody record me. I looked at the symbols. I found a few of them in order, and I made the symbols. And then there was an artificing table in our basement. We didn't know what it was for, but you could take the symbols and put them in this thing. It just had 5 slots. So I put them in order and hit finish. And then they were attachable to my weapon. So I attached it to my weapon, and lo and behold, if I did the same acts in a row that would cause those symbols to pop up, it would give me if I did it, it would give me a buff on my display bar. And then we just had to figure out by looking at the numbers, because in Orbis, they don't actually give you a printout of your combat stats. You actually, all you did was see the numbers in game. So you just have to write them down. And I noticed that my damage went up by 10% when that buff was up, and the buff only lasted 3 to 4 seconds. But this whole system had to just be figured out by players. Yeah, it was ridiculous. The game came out in December with artificing in it. The first set that was artificed, me and Jay both artificed sets around the same time. We worked together, a guy named Jay in the game, sometime in mid-January. It took a month and a half for anybody in the community to even figure it out. And
but that becomes part of the game, which is interesting.
Every in-game player has all their stuff artificed. I mean, you have to, or else you can't even keep up. But it all had to be spread word of mouth. And I think that can only really be done in a game that's super low population. So there is some
Yeah.
advantage of small games.
And that's also the antithesis of like as all these Kickstarters are evidence of, like an MMO needs investment, they need a value, they need like a lot of customers and stuff. So it's interesting because it's like this is a very unique time to get in on the ground. And this is actually kind of convincing me to kickstart some of these other MMOs, is that it's a unique opportunity to have the immersive quality of social VR combined with an MMO that really will never occur in the future. Like once headsets proliferate and there's like, you know, on the first day of Orbis, if there were 10,000 people in, a lot of these things would be figured out very quickly and you wouldn't have that sense of community. But because we're in this, because all of us are kind of early adopters and we're experiencing this, you know, early, we have this unique opportunity to like explore a new world, build a whole community, and like understand it in a very different way fundamentally than, you know, if there was a new MMO like World of Warcraft expansion pack that's kind of like, oh, the pros are just going to come in and in 3 days you're going to know everything, or, you know, those kinds of things. So that's very interesting.
Well, and the last point I wanted to make before I move on to the next thing is the community aspect of it. That to me is unlike so every one of y'all that are VRChat lovers, y'all understand the community aspect. It's the exact same in Orbis. But imagine playing any video game you've ever played, but you have the same community aspect as VRChat in that game. So it's so everybody's played games, not everybody, but a lot of people play games with open mics now, where you have a guild and you play with an open mic like you would on you know, Xbox has
Like
that
TeamSpeak,
now, right?
or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, and you do feel closer with players than you do just typing. But the immersive quality of standing next to a person or walking up to a lake with a fishing pole and just throwing it in next to somebody and just chatting about the weather in the game, literally, or wherever they're from, is so much more immersive. And it made it where the guilds, so my guild personally, I'm kind of proud of, because I don't think it can exist in flat screen games, or it'd be very hard. Because the way my guild was set up, so I joined a regular guild. Most guilds have a leader that creates the guild, and then they get officers and they get members and all this. And the first guild I was in, I was a regular member, and I was an in-game player. I played a lot. I was one of their better players, but I wasn't an officer. And they'd have these officer meetings, and I just felt weird about it. You know what I mean? And like I had some kid that started the guild. He was a good guy. He still plays. He's a friend of mine. But he was like my boss almost in the game. I just didn't like it. So I decided I was gonna leave and try something else. And I had a few friends come with me. And we ended up well with and we started our own guild. But in our guild, no leaders, no officers, everybody's a member. The way we'll make that work is we won't just let anybody join. We have to know you. You have to be a friend of ours, and you can join. And we became a guild of friends. And everything was, anytime we wanted a new member, they could be a recruit unless we knew, like, unless somebody said, okay, this is a friend of mine, I want him in the guild, we'd say, okay, they could come in. But most of the time we'd make him a recruit for about a week. And if they were a nice guy, they fit the group, or gal, we ended up with a lot of girls in the guild, they would become a member. And it made it where it was so close, and we were such a good team too. And unlike the other guilds, the other top guilds basically had to have this hierarchical system where they would have these places where you could sign up to run raids and sign up to run groups. And because they didn't trust people to just, I guess, fit in socially in the groups and also be good enough. And there was something about, like, in our guild, if you felt like you were holding everybody back, you just wouldn't, okay, I don't run the top level stuff because I know I'm not good enough. Or they would try really hard to get the beat to become good enough. And we ended up with some of the best players in the game in our guild, even though we never had to have this hierarchical system with requirements and all that. And that really doesn't work in games like World of Warcraft and stuff, because, and especially, I didn't know anybody in my guild except for my wife outside the game. I met every single one of them in game, and it became personal friendships.
Interesting.
But it also, whenever guilds broke up, it did, especially in such a small group, there was some vindictive stuff. You do have some people that get very hurt about
social dramas.
Definitely a real thing. It's a thing you have to deal with, because we had members who fought with other members and left the guild, and now they're still around, and it's super awkward. It's not like a regular MMO where, oh, I'll be on a different server, or you just walk by their character. You're literally like face to face with them, and you can hear them talking and saying negative things about you in the corner. So it's like real life, which is both good and bad. I actually find it charming, but it can be awkward.
So interesting. So I mean, like, it sounds like Orbis has interesting experiences that are kind of like telling for the future of MMOs, and I'm curious.
I really think that that's gonna be normal in MMOs. Yeah, in VR MMOs.
I'm curious, like, as we head towards the end of the episode and stuff, like, where you think things are going, or are there any last points or last things about Orbis that you wanted to talk about, but also like where you think things are going as well?
I guess I'll get through the rest real quick then. I didn't know it was taking too long. So let me switch to the next. So, wrong way.
That's okay.
Okay. The videos didn't pop up. Yeah, the videos aren't working. Oh, okay.
Here, we can show. We can just show here 1 sec. Hold on.
Yeah, I wanted to show the one thing that's really interesting about Orbis, and that's another one of those things that can only be done in VR, is that Orbis is highly skill based. It's not just pressing buttons in the right order, which I mean does have a skill, but this is the casting system in Orbis. You literally have to draw the spells in the air.
Oh my god, that frustrated me so much. It was impossible to do. Like some of them, I was just like, I'm doing it. I looked at the screenshot, and I was like, I'm doing this, but it's nice. I mean, that's like something you can't have in in a TV.
Part of it is that the game is, and also like that spell is 3-dimensional. You're not just drawing on a flat plane. You actually have to make a line around the back. But so
I liked it, but I was frustrated.
Yeah, so, and of course it's a port, so the game's made by a very small team that's buggy, so a lot of the spells didn't always work right, which added frustration. But okay, every time you cast a spell, you have to press a button, draw it in air, press another button, and then press another button again to launch it.
I spent hours trying to learn that damn F. That capital F.
To do frost, which by the way you can make a P, and it's like or a little candy cane shape. There's a lot of
now I learned. Great.
But so this is a guy just showing the normal spells. Can you go to the next video?
Is it the next button, Ghoster, right here?
Yeah, I've got keyboard commands too.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so this is the guy. Oh wait, just one forward. This is the guy who's in my guild named Sift. He happened to be the best mage in the game. So they had so much trouble balancing because it's skill based so damage wise, the average DPS does about 20,000 damage, but the average rune mage only does about 15,000. Sift does 90,000 because he can cast 5 spells a second.
Oh my god.
Yeah,
insane.
And he's 15 years old. He's an absolute beast, and he's cocky as shit too. But that's a whole nother thing.
So did he spend a lot of time learning the spells? Like,
yeah. So specifically, so he's a young fella. He met me, and he wasn't very good. I ran a couple dungeons with him, and he wanted to join the guild. And I said, man, you can join. You're younger. We normally don't take non-adults, but you seem like a nice guy. We'll take you, but you need to practice. You need to get good. He took that like to heart and just practiced all the time. Yeah, and he has a lot more time than the rest of us, and he got a lot more ligaments in his arm probably. He just pop, 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 pop.
He has more motor. Yeah, he's more plastic. He can learn more fine motor control.
But him and a few others that were good though, they caused so many problems for the devs though, because in a skill-based game, unless you create some kind of actual stop to make it where you can't make over a certain amount of damage, you can just learn to do the skill way faster than anybody thought was possible. And like, you get a couple of great mages together, they'll destroy a dungeon. But like I said, the average mage does less damage than the rest of the classes because it's a difficult class. The average mage isn't very good. But the top mages break the game. Yeah.
Shining, did you have a comment?
No, sorry, I was trying to see how fast I could do the spell.
Oh, I was like, are you trying to communicate by spell or? Nice.
But that's something that's going to be interesting about VR MMOs going forward, is that all of them are going to have that skill, but at least any good one will have a skill base built into it. Your class, it doesn't have to have, like in World of Warcraft, one class might have 50 skills. Well, in VR, you only need a class to have 4 or 5 things. But if they're all something that has to be done, there's so much skill to be gained by doing them that it makes it stay interesting.
Also, I'd love to see like a, Wingardium Leviosa, like you have to use the right, voice command in addition to some kind of movement. That would be really cool too.
So the only problem with that is if you're in a dungeon with comms and you're doing a 10-man dungeon and you have 5 mages all screaming words out, it could be get a little old.
Yeah.
We did think about that.
But you could actually have it so that when you're casting a spell, you hold down a button which mutes your microphone and simultaneously allows you to
Or it would be an option where you could do it out loud, or you could have it covered. Yeah.
But is this the other video that you wanted to show as well?
Yeah, just the last video. So you just hit that one? Nope. Oh.
One more. There we
Okay.
go.
So all this was so my one last claim to fame in the game was we did me and my group got really good. In fact, Sif's in this group at running dungeons. So we decided to just do a speed run to see how fast we could get through it. And we did a dungeon run in 3 minutes. But I just wanted to show, I'm sorry the quality's so bad, just kind of what the gameplay is like, and just the amount of coordination. And I think that's what makes the game so, because most VR games that are competitive right now are competitive player versus
against
player.
each other. Yeah.
So you're killing other players. So while even poker, like I love the poker game of Poker Stars. While it's fun, you're competing against other players. So the people you're socializing with are your enemy in a lot of cases. So it's hard to really have interesting social interactions with an enemy. Where in this, where it's a PvE situation where you're all working towards a goal, it makes it where I guess it's a lot more, to me, it's a lot more enjoyable because these are all my friends, but we're like, and when somebody makes a mistake, we talk through it. How can they fix it? How can we get better at it? And whenever we succeed, everyone in the room succeeds together. And it's exciting in that way where you don't have half of the group, lost. So it's like playing a sport, but it's a sport that you're playing against. It's a team sport, but you don't have any losers on the other side. And I find that's really compelling because the biggest problem with match-made games is that you have to lose 50% of the time to make it even for everybody, right?
Yeah.
Where in a PvE situation, you can win most of the time, right? So that's what I find really compelling about VR MMOs. And yeah, that was the last video. It's just us going through, and then and this was the last interesting mechanic of the game that I found interesting. So they tried to make this thing called the Wilds, where
like the wilderness in RuneScape. You right?
Okay. Well, I've never played RuneScape, but it was an area where it was open PvP. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. If you cross a line, like you can kill each other and get your loot and all that kind of stuff.
In the Wilds, they hid special in-game items that you could only get in the Wilds. That just stuff you pick up off the ground, or fishing areas. But it never really worked in Orbis because, and maybe it's because the community's small, but I think a lot of it's because it's VR. Because the idea of somebody going out there and murdering somebody who's just trying to fish is absolutely appalling. Like, you would get so angry at people because it looked like you would see
they'd be ostracized.
Yeah, they would. Yeah, like people would call it out on the forums. People would get really mad, and God, it never really worked. And I think in a 2D game, it's so less personal.
You don't care.
It is in a VR
That's like desktop
game.
users in VRChat sometimes who are more not all desktop users, but sometimes more trolls can be desktop users sometimes because people don't realize that you feel like you're with other people, like they don't feel that social pressure.
And so they did they made some fixes to make PvP work, and what they did is they made it where you get bonuses for having PvP on, but you had to choose to turn PvP on. Like what made the Wilds a problem is there were certain items you could only get in the Wilds, and a lot of people would go out there just to get those items. They actually didn't want to do PvP. So people that would kill them, they would take very personal, including myself. But once they added it where you had to turn PvP on and it was just for a bonus experience or whatever, people were more fine with it because you chose to go out in a way that you're ready to fight someone else. And PvP's fun when both people choose to do it. But whenever you're trying to gather something and somebody's chasing you down and murdering you, it just never really
It's
works.
interesting that you say murdering, because I'm pretty sure that like we don't use the term murder in games really. I mean, like I don't think most of us use that, but it's interesting that this is so immersive. You're like, what the hell, you just murdered me, like, you know, you feel like your identity has been attacked. So it's
Yeah, it's very intense. Yeah, it's a very intense situation, which, I mean, some people would probably enjoy that type of situation. But generally, killing a fisherman, it ended up where only one person in the community was willing to do it. And he just dealt with the fact that he was ostracized. Most people would, like, die. If you would kill a fisherman, like, you were just the worst person. Because, like, literally, they had no way to attack you. They had a fishing pole. And, yeah,
So yeah, where do you see in our last few minutes before we wrap up? We're almost at an hour, but where do you see things going? I'm curious, and I'm also, if anyone else has predictions or thoughts about the future.
The last thing in the talk. So the 3 games I announced, I said those are the games that are coming soon, but these are all indie games that are being kickstarted. Small, so I can't see them being that much more than Orbis. And to be fair, there is no AAA games, VR MMOs that have been announced. And which is very disappointing. So that's unfortunately where we're at right now. We're all still waiting for the developer to put, you know, their money where their mouth is, spend the $10 or $20 million to make. And unfortunately, it'll probably be Facebook first. But
Horizons. I mean, Horizons is coming.
But isn't Horizons just like VRChat?
Yeah, this should be the kind of like Horizons. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it is. But it'll be interesting. Who knows? I mean, I think it'll be interesting to see what Horizons is like. I think the beta is coming out soon, so hopefully we'll get to try it.
Are they talking about having boss mechanics and fights and levels?
I mean, I think this is like for middle-aged like people who are,
hey,
you know, they showed in the preview.
Out of this.
No. That's true. That was very ageist of me, but people who are not interested in as many MMOs, maybe, or I'm not sure, but yeah. Well, thank you. This has been a fascinating dive into VR MMOs and what the potential is, what the differences are, and I think it's a really important thing. And I think one takeaway that I have is that the sense of community is like so, you know, just like VRChat, where we all feel connected right now. When you combine that with an MMO, it's really powerful. Powerful experience.
Have fun. Yep. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Cool. So, any last thoughts or any other reactions or anything that people have about MMOs in general? Yeah, Shining.
Just need them.
Yeah, just need them. Yes.
We're definitely in an interesting position with VR at this current time frame. Much like with the early internet, we're basically at the frontier. We're setting the framework for what defines a good game, what defines a good VR, what the minimum stuff is required for VR, all that stuff.
And that's the one thing that I really have a hope for Banners of Altruis, is that it's all players who played Orbis a lot. And I feel like until you play that type of game, you don't understand what works and what doesn't. And I'm unfortunately scared that the first AAA game that comes out is going to be full of stuff that just doesn't work, because they just don't understand what it's like. I mean, well, Valve with the sliding, right? At first, Valve said never move the player. You should never put slide movement in a game because people are going to get sick. And then once people played VR, everybody says, no, after a month or two, other than a small percentage of the population, most people are fine with sliding, and it's much more immersive. Yeah. And there's a lot of things like that you have to make the game not work and then figure out what doesn't work and then make the next generation even better.
There's a fine line between too ambitious and not ambitious enough. Like
that's a great point.
Windlands has a very good mechanic where you can basically sort of Spider-Man around with grappling hooks. And if you're good at VR, you can get very, very good at that system, and it doesn't make you sick at all. Well, it doesn't make me sick. But on the same note, the mechanics on this one
where I could basically be blind and moving around with a stick and just seeing that orb at the end, I'm not going to be able to put up with that too long unless there's an off switch.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we'll have to see. I think we're gonna have to see what the future holds for MMOs, but I think in VR. But I think it's this is a very interesting area, and we're gonna have to monitor it. So maybe we'll have to have you back after these are released too, and think about evaluating them and stuff.
I know it's completely irrational, but I'm hoping that some major company is actually working on the killer
Secret,
VR MMO. Yeah, it just hasn't told any soul.
I mean, I'd be shocked if Blizzard isn't working on something like that. So, but yeah, well, thank you for coming on, and we need to take group picture. So yeah, you want to set up with the outro. Intro, outro. Yes, thank you guys for coming. Very interesting points too. Oh wait, I haven't turned off security. Sorry, I was trolling. Hold on.
When security's on, you need to have like a guy with his arms crossed in a suit, just like on the corner.
Where's?
Have a bouncer.
Oh, security off. All right, security's off.
Yes.
It is actually a picture of a guy, which is interesting. But yeah, come to the front of the stage, everyone, and yeah, let's take a group picture.
Let's get it. Ooh. Wait, where's my piece?
Oh, Psych, go back to the first screen.
Oh yeah.
The image you made.
Hold on, and where's the controller?
It's on.
It's over here.
Oh yeah.
So you just hit the green button again, right?
Yeah.
Orange.
You take
Hold
it.
on. Orange. This is a great presentation, by the way.
Going the wrong way.
Oh no.
We already got some trouble.
There we go.
All right, guys.
I put my arm around my buddy. He's the hero we need.
What's a good MMO term? Is it a grind?
Grinding,
Yes,
yeah.
queen.
That's what
Yes,
that's what I was thinking on.
Alright, let me get my photo camera out.
What are you saying? Grinding?
Yeah.
Okay.
Alright, grinding in 3,
Grinding,
2, 1.
Grinding.
Grinding, yes,
Yeah.
grinding.
We all love it. It's so fun.
Not the thing that girls doing, guys. What?
Oh man.
Thing that you can do in an MMO.
Yes.
Ooh.
Different from Grinder, but
Alright.
yeah.
I mean, that's kind of an MMO.
Yeah, that's true.
Grinder.
It's very different.
Kind of like Pokemon Go.
Yeah, very different loot boxes though. But
Yeah.
oh well. Yeah, thanks Rejinx. That was great.
Yeah, thanks,
Thanks for
guys.
having me, guys. I had
Thanks
fun.
guys for coming. That was awesome.
Joe, you're adorable.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.